Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today I have a very special replay for you sent in by Flying Mushroom. It's about the American Battle Rating 8.0 medium tank, the T95E1. And I want to start here explaining why this is a very special replay. It is me starting with a little bit of a history lesson, or a little bit of a story time, if you will. So the thing about this tank is it was introduced in June 2017 in the update 1.69. That was the update that followed the April Fool's event of 2017, which was, rank 9. And in rank 9 we saw amongst many new things like helicopters and air-launched ATGMs. We also saw the Middle East map, and on top of this also the Leopard 2A5 and the T90A, and they were kind of foreshadowing what we have now for quite some years. And the feedback apparently from the player base was overwhelmingly positive, to such a degree that I made a video on it, kind of looking at it from the other side. Why, it was actually fun. And yeah, I had fun in that game mode as well. The map was new, the tanks were new, they were really fast, we had new magic shell types, everything was just really polished out, I have to say. And it was fun while it lasted. And all those things together really made the difference. The map was new, so everybody learned the positions, everybody tried to find his place, so it was a really dynamic kind of gameplay. That was the first place. That was point number one. Point number two being the tanks were really fast, and they were completely fully upgraded with all the modules unlocked, and obviously all the crews were fully trained with the ACE qualification. So obviously it was really smoothened out, and then there was nothing too wrong about here. And while helicopters were there, they were not really the cancer of the sky, because you could shoot them down. You could do something about it, and they were not sitting at like 10 kilometers distance trying to snipe you. So the April Fool's event was kind of betraying our imagination, and so everybody said, yeah, we want this, we want this, we want this. And maybe Gaijin was also overwhelmed with kind of the response, but I also had the feeling that this is too much work for just an April Fool's event, right? Because the tanks looked really great, the helicopters looked really great, and while the flight models of the helicopters and their controls were not the very best, they were kind of still operable. And also the map, you wouldn't really design a map for just an April Fool's event, right? Especially if it was actually surprisingly detailed for just a one-off event. So I thought to myself, well, nah, they won't introduce this and so forth, because it was just too far in the future. What did we have back in the days? Rank 5? Rank 6? Was rank 6 a thing already in 2017? I'm not quite sure. I don't think so, actually. So I could be wrong here, but I digress anyway. So the funny thing was then that, well, again, the response was overwhelmingly positive. And, I think at the time I wouldn't have been opposing the introduction of those tanks too much if I would have seen them coming in a balanced way, the decompression, etc. But all those stuff didn't happen, so Gaijin made a lot of the already existing problems significantly worse. Anyway, it then began with this tank. It was introduced in update 1.69, I think together with the Italian planes, not quite sure about this, and that was in, as I said, June 2017, so shortly after. So that was the first indicator that it was planned all along, because you can't really create a tank out of thin air in just a few weeks or months, I guess. Gaijin in the past made a big fuss about them, how long it takes to make such a model, and it's like months of work time from a single person, etc. Anyway, why I'm talking about this tank is because it was the first tank that brought APFSDS to the live server. And that was then, back in the days, something new, but it was more in the region of APDS. Yes, it felt a bit better for the penetration, for the base penetration against flat armor that it had, but it was nothing super new game breaking. Remember, we already had ATGMs, we already had Heat FS, we already had tanks with stabilizers, etc. So all those things, yeah, they were interesting to say the least. But again, nothing special. And you also have to see it from what the platform is. While the armor of the T95E1 is pretty trolley versus APHE, it also can troll you. You know, there are still weak spots, not just the Commander's Cupola, but you know, various different pixels on the turret front and also the turret ring. Then there's also the mobility. Yeah, 14.5 horsepower per ton ratio is not the greatest thing, but it's definitely not terrible either. Most British tanks would love to see this kind of horsepower to ton ratio or mobility. Then there is also the turret rotation speed, 36 degrees per second. That's really good. And then there's also 4 degrees per second gun elevation. That is kind of Second World War tank standard. And then there's the reload, 8.5 seconds. Another nice feature about this tank is that you get the APFSDS right from the get-go, but then you don't have APHE, and your HE is also not really anything special. And as a tier 4 upgrade, you then get the smoke shell. So you have 3 different ammunition types, but only one is really viable. So all this brought us now to this point where, in retrospect, this is kind of the foreshadowing of the tanks that just goes through normal standard steel armor like a hot knife through butter. And you have to see it from also the standpoint that Heat FS did pretty much the same, but APFSDS, you can shoot it through bushes and even some houses, and it still would go through and damage enemy tanks. For example, here the Swedish medium tank. Yeah, so that was a very good disabling shot, both taking here the transmission and the gun barrel. And then obviously this shot killed 2 out of the 3 crew members, but 1 is still alive. And so here we go, trying to kill this STRV 1030, and that was a shot too much in front because it just killed the 2 already dead crew members once more. Not dead crew members, mortally challenged, obviously. So he swung his tank around and is now observing also the cap, and just as planned, T94-100. Good disabling shot. That is the gun breach, the turret ring, and 2 enemies dead inside of the tank. So that T94-100 doesn't really feel happy. And so this shot was not optimal. While it injured the gunner, it didn't kill him. So kill denied at first. And then before he can follow it up, there is a T-54 trying to crest the ridgeline. And if you would fire, that would give that tank 8.5 seconds plus time to cross the ridgeline and get a shell into probably the commander's cupola. And here he's thinking about, putting one into the T-54, which can't get the gun barrel on him, but then he would expose his tank to probably potentially all the campers, while we can see him thanks to the replay function of the name tags, etc. He, obviously in tank RP, couldn't. So the question obviously is now, was top tier better for the game from a health perspective, and also how dangerous was APFSDS as a shell type? To make it short, I think top tier made Gaijin a ton of money. Millions upon millions. Just think about all the premiums and all the new premiums that they could just throw into the game because of the timeline, and also new features like these days night vision device, thermal imaging, And obviously the shell type APFSDS being very desirable with the stabilizer. It just is significantly smoother to play than a World War II tank that wobbles all over the place. And obviously you can trick people into buying this tank that think, if I only had a better tank, then I would be better as well. And this is why Gaijin is offering you those €60 bundles, which obviously increase your skill. Yes. Talking about skill, T94-100, and yeah, no more. And that is 9 kills, 2 assists, and 1 cap. So he has his team has now definitely the upper hand in terms of player numbers, in terms of caps, and also the ticket lead. And so he's just looking around, and obviously he doesn't want to throw his tank away. And so he's just being very patient here. Overall, I think that those modern MBTs are just adding a lot of diversity. But the way that Gaijin did it, with this forced compression, with this, I don't know how to say it, oversped, with this oversped introduction, and always only high tier content these days, high tier content, very expensive obviously, and also requiring a lot of RP and a lot of gold needles to unlock those precious upgrades. And it's really interesting, to say the least. So with that in mind, I think that the T95E1 was the first of its kind with the ammunition time. But one little anecdote here to finish it off. It was not the first lolpan tank in War Thunder, and I'm not talking about the heat rounds here. I'm talking here about, believe it or not, APCR. Back in the days when the American tech tree came out, I grinded like crazy, and I was soon reaching the T32. And it had this crazy good turret armor, and then the reload was really long. And then its APCR had the highest penetration. And it was the first tank that actually could go through the frontal plating of a IS-3 and especially the IS-4, which were impenetrable in that aspect, in most aspects when it came to the frontal armor. So then later, Gaijin was quick to change the penetration mechanics, and then since then APCR is kind of useless. And here, just at the end, he got his 10th kill for a perfect double ace, Heavy Metal Hero, Survivor Award, 84,000 silver lines, and also 10,200 vehicle research points, and also the T95E1 was not completely upgraded. So thanks for sending this in, Flying Mushroom. It served me as great background footage. You showed great situation awareness, holding a position, reducing the enemy's number, teamwork, and also, again, situation awareness combined with teamwork. Remember the pincer maneuver in the cap? It was nice to watch, and it looked so fluently. And whenever I try this, oh boy, do I get bitch slapped. So anyways, that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this replay and this featuring. Let me know if you did, and also let me know via like, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other in the skies and on the battlefields of War Thunder.